Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Lisa Fain, I'm the CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence, but I'm here in my capacity as an ambassador to the board of the International Mentoring Association to further our discussions with experts in the mentoring field. And today I am so pleased that we're joined by Virginia McGowan. She and I are going to launch into a conversation in a few moments, but first I'll introduce her to all of you who are watching. Virginia is a knowledge entrepreneur who, following a career as an applied anthropologist, scholar, and senior advisor to the federal government, established several businesses in one of the most beautiful places there is, Prince Edward Island in Canada, including the Business Mentoring Solution. Virginia was the researcher, developer, and the program manager of the business mentorship pilot for women entrepreneurs that's rolled out across Prince Edward Island from 2014 to 2017. That was published as an academic book chapter on island communities. She's been a mentor with the Sherry Blair Foundation for Women and the National Canadian Organization Forum for Women Entrepreneurs. She's a certified mentoring program manager and an author of the multi-award-winning book, Harness the Power of Mentoring, How to Find and Work with the Right Mentor, which is a guide for solopreneurs. So I have lots of questions and interests in that as a solopreneur myself. And that was the first in a series of books on mentoring and the solopreneur. She's presented a series of 3 webinars for IMA, in the fall of last year, including workshops on mentoring locally, nationally, and internationally, and has written about mentoring in numerous publications. She's leading the development of the mentoring program for the Rotary Club of Charlottetown and Prince Edward Island. Then that will ultimately inform mentoring across all of Rotary International, which is another organization near and dear to my family's heart. So more to talk about. The recipient of the 2019 WISE 50 Over 50 Award. She's a member of the expert panel on women entrepreneurship strategy. She's committed to evidence-based and community-based mentoring and the application of social science, helping others in the tradition of the anthropologist Margaret Mead. She's recently received a COVID-19 business adaptation grant from the PEI government to move her mentoring workshops to online presentations. So, Virginia, welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. It's nice to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so excited to have you here. All right, so let's dive in. First, I'd love to hear about your thoughts about mentorship and the solo entrepreneur. Why and how have solo entrepreneurs benefited from mentoring?
Well, let's step back a bit and talk about what solopreneurs face. They face it's defined by the word itself. They're in business by themselves. They don't have that support network that people who are working in larger corporations have to help them to find their way, as it were. It's a daunting task. In the research that I did leading up to the pilot program that we launched with the PEI Businesswomen's Association, I interviewed over 300 women in business across the island, and what I heard from them was feelings of being completely overwhelmed, feeling that they were the most stupid person in the room, the lack of confidence they could do it. They were finding pressure from their families saying, "Who do you think you are that you could do this?" They were hearing naysayers from every corner, and they didn't have anyone to help them by saying, well, let's help them to explore those kinds of things and help them find that inner strength and develop that strength to go on. So this is where my voyage of discovery was, in finding that so many people, not just women, but men I talked to as well, felt this way when they're entrepreneurs. Women tended to be amongst the majority of those who've had that massive loss of confidence. So they tend to be subjected to, well, you have a family, how could you find time to, start a business? Why would you do that? No tall poppy here. So this sparked my interest in writing the book, because I felt I looked around and I saw nothing for them. Nothing for the solopreneur to help them to understand what mentoring could bring to them, to have someone in their corner, to have someone help them to find their feet, to someone to whisper words of encouragement and perhaps open new options to them they hadn't discovered before. Someone to be there for them and build their resiliency, build their sense of agency, and build their confidence.
How did you come to have an interest in this topic?
In the subject of mentoring? Well, just all through my life, like a lot of us, I've benefited from having a mentor at various stages, and being a mentor to others. At one point, I've been a senior manager, and I've been a senior academic in a university department, a head of department. I've had various kinds of roles where I've had younger people and sometimes older people that I've needed to mentor, and I've been mentored by them myself. And so I knew all too well just how powerful mentoring can be. And I'm not talking about that old school of mentoring. I'm talking about the New Deal, you know,
Yeah.
the developmental mentoring, not the old style of quarterback mentoring, or as I call it, dinosaur mentoring.
Oh, I love that term, dinosaur mentoring. It's a good way to frame it. So what do you see as the obstacles? Obviously, solopreneurs work by themselves by definition.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I often when I talk to other, particularly women in business, they say they don't even know where to start. You know, they feel like there's so much for them to learn. Where do they go to find the person or people to help them?
Yeah. Well, I tell them to look around about 2 meters, or for you Americans, 6 feet around them, and see who's there. You'd be surprised at who's there, and how generous of spirit people are. When I give that advice to people and they try that out, they say, "Wow, somebody said yes." You know? And and it's as you know, don't ask the person who is the top CEO of the top top 500 companies in the world. Just look around and see who's in your community. And I tell them, the key to being successful in business is networking. You really need to network. And so I tell them, join a club like Rotary or others that are service clubs that are around there. You'll meet people from all kinds of walks of life. Join your local business association. We're fortunate here that we have a business women's association that's extraordinarily active and provides support, but it's small enough that you can actually get to know people. You go to the annual symposium, you go to the mixers, and you see people, and I say, go into the room, give yourself the goal of meeting one new person, and from there it will spread. But networking is really the key. It's what you have to do.
Yeah, networking is huge. How do you know though, once you've met people, and you've now got this network of people, some of whom are rock stars, right? Some of whom are quiet rock stars, right? And what can be just as maybe we'll call them classical music stars, maybe to continue the analogy. But how do you know what to ask for?
Well, for me, what I look for is, you click personally. Get to know them. Ask. I tell them, look, don't start off by jumping in and saying, "Will you be my mentor?" Watch them run the other way. But you get to know them. Start a conversation. Show interest in them. I cover this in my book. I talk about how you go about finding the right mentor. So, go slow. Just get to know them. Ask them questions about themselves. Show interest. And, the old Dale Carnegie program used to tell people, I guess it still does, that the sweetest sound in any language is the sound of a person's own name. So if you show interest in another person, then they're going to say, oh, okay, this person's interested in me, and you can strike up a conversation, find out if you think it's going to, where it's going to lead, and then, just slowly, step by step, test the waters with a number of different people. And when you think you found someone that could work with you, then ask them. Be surprised. People are generous.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're not going to tread too much in their time, you're not asking them to be on the phone with you every day. You're saying, can we get together once a month for coffee? Because entrepreneurs are very busy people. What's that?
Yeah, and I think that specificity is really important. Because it's, as opposed to just kind of this amorphous, will you be my mentor? Really saying, what I'm talking about is coffee once a month. Well, what I'd like to learn is that one of the things that strikes me the most about what you were saying, Virginia, is this idea of building a relationship before you make the ask.
Always. It's all about a relationship, so you need to build that relationship. I mean, first you connect. You do that through your networking, and then you start to build relationships. And even if it turns out that the person is someone who you want to or can be your mentor, it's still a relationship that you've developed. And, in business these days, relationships are what matter. And with my clients, I do research writing and editing. And what I do is I make very sure that I build relationships with my clients that are very strong. I do nonfiction only, so a lot of the time I'm working with scholars with their work they want to have published, or research groups at universities, or really distraught graduate students who have a thesis or a dissertation due, and they're at their wits' end. All these kinds of people. And So if you build a relationship with them, it's a trust thing. You have to decide what kind of relationship you want with your clients or customers. And what I've found is if you want a transactional relationship, well, best of British luck to you. But if you want a relational business relation with your clients, you'll be much stronger for it, and they will too, and the work will be better, and they'll be more appreciative, and they're more inclined to stick with you and to refer you to other people. I don't advertise my business. It's all word of mouth.
Yeah.
I'm so busy. I have too much work.
You know, it's interesting because when you develop that relationship, you're also stoking the reciprocity in the relationship,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And you're recognizing that there's an emotional and cognitive, emotional and psychosocial aspect to the relationship you have with the people that you're working with. They have a lot at stake in the work and what they're asking you to do. First of all, they're paying you. And so there's a lot there that's going on that they need to trust you that you're going to deliver on your promise. Just like and I know that you're a well-established author, when you write a book, you make a promise to your readers, and you darn well better follow through.
100%, that's 100%
Yeah.
correct. 100%
Yeah.
correct. It's interesting too, because I don't know if you've heard this from any of the women entrepreneurs or any of the solopreneurs that you've worked with, male or female, but I hear a lot from people who are wanting mentor that they are nervous about being a burden on somebody's time, or they don't want to impose, or they don't want to disappoint their potential mentor. What do you say to people when you do that?
What I say is be very clear about expectations and put it in writing. Say, this is what I understand. Develop that common understanding what a mentoring relationship is all about. Make it clear what you expect from them. Communication is a wonderful thing, and clear communication is even better. So if you both come into the relationship with a clear understanding of what the expectations are, then you're going to achieve more together, I believe. And I've seen that happen in action. Whereas if things are not clear, and this is where I think a structured mentoring program comes into place, because then you have the resources that people can go to. And the mentoring program manager also is someone who acts as a mentor to the mentor. And I think that's terribly important. Because one of the things that I've seen around is that mentoring programs that don't have structure, and I don't mean a really solid structure, but more of like a backbone. It gives flexibility according to what's going on. But particularly in a community-based mentoring program like the program that I worked with the Business Women's Association, it needs to have something there in which you can help them to prepare for their relationship and support them through that. And if things start going awry, well, if you have no one there who's sort of, what was a friend of mine, sort of benignly watching from the sidelines, and you have nowhere to go when things aren't working out, what do? You don't want to, all mentoring relationships may not be made in heaven. And if it's time for it's come to its natural end, or perhaps if it's just not working out because people are like that. You can't expect all relationships to work out for the best. What are you going to do? Who's going to support you to bring that to a conclusion in a way that maintains the respect of all parties and is a friendly leave taking rather than something that leaves people feeling diminished on either side?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
so powerful. So powerful. I think the other thing that strikes me is, I also often say, get it in writing, set the parameters for your, establish agreements. We call it the negotiation of your, of the agreements of your mentoring relationship. Is when you have a formal program, it takes the awkwardness out of that. I mean,
it
feels pretty stilted when you're not in a mentoring program to meet somebody and say, hey, can we write down what the parameters of our relationship are, right?
Yeah, it can be.
Important.
Yeah,
it can
be. It can be. It certainly can be. I think that.
I'm sorry, there's a delay. Please go.
Yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say almost gives the mentor and the mentee permission, right, to add the structure in a way that takes some of the awkwardness out of it as well. What were you about to say?
No, exactly. I agree with you completely, Lisa. I think that what happens is that when you have a mentoring program that provides a structure around the mentoring relationship, it helps to maintain it. It helps them get past some of the speed bumps, but it also gives you that third party, well, this is what they're saying we should do. Oh, okay. It's not me saying that this is what I want to do. It's, okay, this is the structure that this mentoring program has. It says that this is what we could follow for our first meeting, and this is how we could follow, so our penultimate meeting, or all those kinds of things that say, well, this is a structure that we suggest that you follow, and you can adapt it, but it's a place to get started from. Otherwise, people have, it is awkward if you're not like that. I mean, I remember I had a young staffer come up to me at one point and say, would you be my mentor? Oh, sure. Am I not already? But, and it was, trying to define what it was. His idea of what mentoring was very different than what mine was. He thought it was more of the old style of somebody quarterbacking his career. And I said, no, that's not what happens here. That's not how. So, but we did work it out, but we're still in touch. But that's, you can get into those kinds of things, which is not bad. I mean, those kinds of conversations are good to have. But I mean, I think what I've seen, for example, the results of the mentoring pilot that we ran here, it absolutely transformed people's lives. It was, I almost get weepy when I think back on it because of, all the women that passed through it and the men as mentors. It was incredible, the changes that happened in people, all through meeting with somebody a couple of hours a month. And, we ran them each of the cohorts for 6 months. And it was just stunning. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. I mean, there were some that, matches that weren't all that great, but, but for the majority of them, wow.
Are there any success stories, obviously without violating confidentiality, but are there any examples or stories from that that you can share?
There was one woman who had just, she and her husband had just, they were real estate agents, hadn't been in the business for very long, but they had just bought a real estate company office with 10 people. Neither one of them had ever had staff before. So I matched them up with an experienced person who wasn't in the real estate business, but he was a really fantastic people person. He understood that running a business with staff is all about HR. It's all about the people. And he helped them. And she went on to be extraordinarily successful. And they've just, that was only a couple of years ago, but since then they've expanded their staff and she's very happy. She feels competent. What she shared with me, before she had no idea how to manage people, but now after she finished that mentoring program, she felt really well able to do that. She understood what her role was, how she had to be a leader, and sometimes a leader, sometimes a manager, sometimes a coach, all those kinds of things that people who own businesses are. And they've since built a huge office with training rooms, and they've taken their business off into a massive direction of being a resource space for all realtors in the area. That's one. There was another one who was a young woman who had just moved here, and she was dealing with very severe allergies that were life-threatening to the point where she couldn't go outside and she couldn't meet with people. She would have to wear gloves and make sure she didn't touch anything. And she was just at her wit's end. She wanted to start a gardening company. That's where her husband and she had moved here. And it's a good place to be in that kind of business. A market garden. Quite frankly, at the end of the 6 months, what she told me was that the program saved her life. She's gone on to have the confidence to seek medical help that's been very successful for her. And I think some of it was psychosomatic, but not all of it as well. But she's gone on to become very healthy, very happy, and doing what she loves to do. But that's what she said to me, this mentoring program saved my life.
Wow. Wow.
I could go on, but I won't. You know what it's like, you get passionate about these things, you can tell stories forever.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears just a little bit, because as we record this, it's the end of May of 2020, where you and I are in different countries, but similar time trajectories in terms of COVID and how it's hit our society and what it means for our business world. How do you see this pandemic changing things for mentoring for entrepreneurs or mentoring in general? Where do you think it's taking us?
Well, I think it's going to become more online, and I've had a lot of experience with that. I've been mentoring with the Sri Blair Foundation for Women. I've had mentees in, let me see, Kenya, the Caribbean, and Indonesia. Obviously, I couldn't be face-to-face with them. With the other program, it's a Canadian national program. I had a mentor in Toronto. So obviously I couldn't be there because that's a long way from here. So I have no qualms about mentoring continuing to be important. In fact, I think it's going to be more important than ever because people are going to have to figure out a new normal, but things are not going to be the same. So we're going to have to figure out, and I'll speak to those of us in the business world, to how to do our business or how to pivot and take advantage of new opportunities, to see those opportunities and figure out how we're going to, if you can keep a business alive in this kind of environment, you can do anything. What we need to do is to be innovative and be challenged. And I think that's a great role for a mentor to say, okay, sorry, what is it you're doing now? What could you do? How could you adapt your business practices to the new normal? And working online is fantastic. You can have a great conversation with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We did a program with UN Women at one point, and the mentors and mentees were on different continents, as you said you've had experience with.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
The beauty of that from a cultural, I know you have an anthropology background as well, but from the idea of a learning perspective for both mentor and mentee in terms of cross-cultural communication, in terms of taking on different lenses of compassion and empathy, it can be so rich when you have the geographic difference. And being online is a great tool to be able to create those connections.
That's true.
As somebody I'm here in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., I often, when I look for my own networking and my own learning opportunities, I tend to look locally, right? I tend to just, who do I run into at the coffee shop, or who is in my local community group, or what have you. But the beauty of this is that it can create mentoring opportunities that are even more far-reaching. If I want to find a mentor in Prince Edward Island, or I want to find a mentor in New York or Florida or Mumbai or wherever, the opportunity for that kind of connection is so rich and so much more normative now.
Yeah, and it really comes to the point that in my opinion, an effective mentoring relationship is mutually beneficial, so that both of you come out of it having learned and expanded your horizons and become more enriched as a result of it, because it's all about the relationship that you have with someone, and if that person comes from a different cultural background, then I would always say, as an anthropologist of 45 years standing, anytime I've worked in a different culture, I think I've learned more about myself than I learned about the people I was working with, because it just challenges you on so many different levels to question, well, why do I think that? Why am I approaching it that way? And to learn that, and also to learn about the commonalities. Woman I worked with in Kenya, an amazingly accomplished person, just, and an entrepreneur from the grassroots, and just had profound accomplishments, but she'd suffered a health crisis, and her self-confidence had just bottomed out. So my role as her mentor became to be a friend, someone that she could talk to, because she couldn't talk about these things that were bothering her on a personal level in her local community, because word travels fast, and you can't, it's just a matter of not trusting that what she had shared would not be shared with others. And, we talked a lot about business strategies and things like that, but for a lot of it, it was just, talking about, giving her an opportunity to talk about the things that she really needed to speak about on a personal level, as well as she tried out, some business ideas, that sort of thing, which is great. But I think this is why I love the developmental model of mentoring. I think that it's because it's holistic. It looks at you as a whole person. I had an opportunity last year. There was a panel, and this particular organization had bought into the MIT model of mentoring, and they had it's a bioscience sort of incubator, And they had a panel of young women that they were mentoring through the development of their, or growth of their, in some cases, of their agri-food based businesses. I went along, I was interested. And they had all these old white guys up there, you know, as the mentors. And they talked about what they were doing and so on. So I went to the mic and I asked them, I said, so you talked a lot about, you know, business ideas and business strategies and so on. So what have you, how have you approached the psycho-emotional aspect of the whole person? Yeah. And silence. They didn't know what they said. Oh, we don't do that. So afterwards at the reception, I went up to each one of them and said, the person asked that question. I'm just wondering, you know, all the research shows us that you need to address people on the issues that people have on an individual, psycho-emotional, and social level. So why did this not happen in your program? Well, it's not part of the program structure. Okay, well, did you not feel compelled to go there? You know? And the answer was, no, I would feel really uncomfortable doing that. So,
Interesting.
Despite the best evidence, you don't want to go there.
Right.
Okay. Missing a unique opportunity.
That's right. And frankly, one of the beautiful things, you've probably seen this too, mentoring relationships go the farthest when both mentor and mentee get a little uncomfortable.
Yes. I always say that well, it actually wasn't just me, it was a Canadian scholar in education years ago, a fellow by the name of Northrop Frye. He said, as someone who is in a teaching mode, it's our job to make you uncomfortable, because that's when you learn. That's when you grow. And it happens both ways, both with the mentor and the mentee, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think what will happen in the mentoring program that you described is that you just get a lot of the same. You get a lot of just kind of knowledge transfer and not a lot of developmental growth. Yeah,
there's no growth there. They just learn how to do it, something they could probably have picked up from a book. But they're really, the thing about really challenging yourself, and with women in particular, it seems that there are all these insecurities and these self-doubts, and the people around them, as I mentioned earlier, saying, who do you think you are? You know, no tall poppies here, just, you know, get off your high horse. Who makes you think you could be successful at running a business or developing a business? And so, you know, and as I say in my book, the self-doubt creeps in, it sticks around like a nasty smell. And it's really hard to get rid of that. And I think that's one of the key parts where a mentor comes in. You know, they need to be realistic about what your chances are of success and failure. We did have some mentors who, you know, were able to work with their mentees to help them understand that their business idea was a no-starter. And that's really good. That's really important. You know, I always say when I do a business startup workshop, and I always say to them, when they come in and say, if you leave this workshop saying, no, entrepreneurship's not for me, at least not at this time, that's good, because you need to know that. You need to know if it's not for you at this time. And I think mentors have a great role in doing that, in helping their mentees see if what they want to do is actually realistic or not. And that there's a great emotional and psychological burden that comes with that as well, that you have to work through. That you're not a failure because you need to, your first idea you had wasn't something that's going to actually work. It's not feasible.
Yeah. That's not failure. I'm so interested in sort of exploring this idea of the imposter syndrome, right, that you're talking about, is this idea of self-doubt. Am I ready? Am I able to be an entrepreneur? You know, and one of the things that I see in my women clients in particular is this idea of waiting until they feel 100% ready to launch.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I know that, how to say, you know, you're never going to be 100% because the business world changes so much. There are always different kinds of challenges and different opportunities that present. You know, you can't, I mean, it's not a straight line. You can't say, this is where I'm going to start, this is where I'm going to go, because you know, we know from complex adaptive systems thinking that what you need to do is to be able to embrace complexity, embrace the unpredictable, all those kinds of good things, and be able to work with relationships so that you are able to, if you need to, as in a business term, to pivot when things are not working out, or if you see a new opportunity presenting them. I mean, right now, one of the things that's happened with me is that I had, I went from just solely doing the research, writing, and editing to now I have coaching and mentoring clients who are writing their first nonfiction book. and they want help with it. So we start off with a conversation and talk about it and talk about what that would look like. And I've had 3 or 4 of these now. I never imagined that I'd be doing that at this point. I was quite content with what I was doing before, but I'm loving this, a whole new aspect of my business. Right? And I meet such interesting people, and we work together for months and months and months, like a year really. And it's very satisfying for me. It helps them. And we end up with these great friendships and exploring all kinds of really interesting things together.
Spectacular, spectacular. Yeah. I'm sure it's fun to know you've been through the process, and you probably didn't feel 100% ready either, right? I mean, I think it's a great lesson for a mentee to know that the people that they admire never felt 100% ready either.
Well, I worked a lot with First Nations elders, and one of the things that they would always say is, remember that the first thing you need to do is to learn to ask for help when you need it. That means that you are basically getting off your high horse, showing some humility, showing a sense of reality that you can't do it all by yourself. My mother used to tell me about when we children in the family were quite small. My father was a veterinary surgeon, and he ran a very busy practice. And my mother helped him with that practice, as well as with 4 children, and she wasn't very well. And she went to her doctor one day, and he looked at her and he said, "Mabel, you can't run the world by yourself. Stop." And it's true, but we seem to think that we should be doing that, particularly as women. We think we should be able to handle everything, and that's not possible. It's just not possible. Nobody in the world was ever expected to do that before.
We need to redefine what strength is to us, right? I mean, strength is not being able to carry the world. Strength is being able to, ask for help when you need it, and to figure out who else who should be your advisors and who should be your mentors, and constructing the village that supports you. To me, that's the biggest indicator of strength. So Virginia, what parting message do you have for folks who are watching, who are trying to figure out in their entrepreneurship journey when the right time to get a mentor is, and whether it's the right thing for them to do to get a mentor?
Probably the best time to get a mentor is when you think you don't need one. but my opinion, from a business perspective, I think you need a mentor at every step along the way, not necessarily the same mentor, because your needs and you are growing as an individual, and your needs and capabilities are going to change, but it's always a good time to have a mentor. Just someone that you can talk, who's not your partner or your best friend, someone who can be, sort of arm's length from you as a person. I don't mean that non-relational, but not someone who's involved with you as family or friends, that you can have an honest conversation with, because there's always something to work out, always. It may be that you're not comfortable with your accountant, and you want to know how you can fire your accountant because you're not comfortable doing that. It could be that you need to, you've had some problems with some clients, that through one thing or another they weren't satisfied, or maybe they were late in payments, and you're not sure how to deal with that. It could be in how to develop a social media. Now that things are progressively going online, now we're going to really have to have online presences. Now, how are you going to do that? How are you going to manage that piece? For me, I reached out, and I'm getting professional help to help me with my workshops online and that sort of thing. And that's where I just got a grant from the Prince Edward Island government to do that, which is really nice. They call it a COVID-19 business adaptation advice program. So we get up to $2,500 to hire a professional to help us, rather than trying to muck about and try to figure it out ourselves, which, quite frankly, in the entrepreneurial world, you don't have time. You just don't have time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. It's always so hard to decide, like, should I be figuring this out, or should I find the right resources? And usually the answer when you're a solopreneur is find the right person who can do it. Just you can't.
Yeah. Some things you need to figure out yourself, and I always tell people that they need to do their own bookkeeping for the first year they're in business, just so they understand the process. But then turn it over to somebody else to help you with it if you need to. I still continue to do my own bookkeeping, but I have an accountant do the final taxes and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of social media, I mean, there are people who are marketing experts. I will never be a marketing expert. I need I don't have time to do that. It's just like, you know, with self-publishing books and workbooks and things like that. I could take a year off of my life and learn how to use Designer. I choose not. I outsource that. So you have to figure out what's worth your time to outsource and what should you be learning to do for yourself. And I think that's another area where a mentor can help you. This will be someone who's been there, done that, can give you, help you develop a very realistic sense of what you should do yourself and what you should outsource. Because they're giving you, not necessarily that you have to agree with them, but at least they can give you a different perspective on it. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, what a delightful conversation. We have much to talk about. I look forward to connecting with you in other venues as well. But thank you so much for your time, Virginia.
Oh, well, thank you.
How can people find you?
Thank you very much for asking me. And for all of you out there, happy mentoring. It's the best thing you can possibly do. It'll change your life.
One last question. How can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
They can find me at, they can contact me through my website, which is, I have two websites. One is writeeditgroup.com, WRITEEDITGROUP.com. The other one is author at thebusinessmentoringsolution.com. And I answer both emails.
Great.
So that's the best way to touch.
We'll put both of those in the notes for this when we post it.
And I'm also on LinkedIn. Really nice to talk to you, Lisa. It's good to catch up with you again.
Likewise. Take care.
Take care.